Alright, it's time for another update and forecast on the Crozier fire. Just looking at the numbers first, it is up over 1,800 acres and 5% containment. As we've always talked about though, that doesn't actually tell us too much about the fire. So what we're going to try to do throughout the course of this video is answer three main questions. Where is the fire? What is the current situation? And where is this fire likely to spread in the future? So the first one that we're going to go into is where is the fire? We'll just start off with a somewhat wide view, and then we'll zero in to actually the fire perimeter. So we have Placerville down here to the southwest. We have Pollock Pines off to the southeast, Meadowbrook off to the west, and then there's a community up here towards the north that I believe has evacuation orders right now, Quintet. And that should be probably the first thing that I say in these videos is I never go over the evacuation orders and warnings because by the time a lot of people are watching this video, they might have changed. So always just stay updated with local information when it comes to that. So the fire itself is burning, it looks like just north of Slate Mountain right there. And then if we zoom in, you can see that it does look like they've been holding it on Mosquito Road. Now this is changed from what we saw yet. Oh, actually, I don't know if they are holding it on Mosquito Road. You see those little areas right there where it appears to actually be slopping over Mosquito Road now, and potentially some spot fires there as well, where burning ember gets picked up, dropped into dry fuels, and then the fire could continue to spread from there. It looks like minimal spread over Mosquito Road though, and then it also looks like we've been active on this northern side, where there's potentially some spot fires up there as well. And looks like it's maybe south of Sailor Ravine, if you're local and you know what that is. It does look like we have that canyon right there, and that makes sense, it's called a ravine. So what that can do sometimes on fires is it funnels your winds, and then that can lead to fire growth in exactly that direction. Now it is interesting looking at the southern edge though, because last night we were expecting this to be where we'd continue to see some growth. And last night's update, the perimeter maybe went to right about there, but then now it looks like it's filled in. I'm not actually sure if that's the fire itself moving or if that's due to a firing operation. Because sometimes what they'll do in the overnight hours when conditions are more favorable is they'll actually purposely light around the road and then have it move uphill back into the fire. So it clears out the fuel so that the fire wouldn't be able to just move through there. The fuels would already be cleared out when you get into the peak hours of the afternoon. So can't exactly say whether it's firing operation or growth itself, but the fact that it's slopped over Mosquito Road kind of makes me lean in the direction towards it's just the fire itself moving. But then on the contrast to that, we have this little line right here, which was posted at 7:51 this morning, where it says crews were able to hold the fire within its current footprint overnight, and fire behavior was moderate per CAL FIRE Amador El Dorado. Burning operations went well. So it does sound like they had some burning operations. I just don't exactly know where those are. And I also don't know if those slop overs that we're seeing on the fire perimeter are since 7:51 a.m. So for that, that's really going to depend on the next question here with what is going on the fire right now. So looking at the current situation, let's come back in here and let's actually see how much heat is coming off of the fire at the moment and where the heat has been recently. So in the last 12 hours, that's going to be anywhere where you see these red stars. It looks like not that much heat on the southern edge. And then you see more of those red stars on the northern side of the fire. And then if we look at current heat detections, this is radically going to overestimate how much the fire is spread, but it gives us general idea of where on the fire it's burning hot right now. And right now it looks like it's mostly on that northern side that's kicking up some heat. And if we look at the smoke, it's a smoke plume. It's not the worst that we've seen this season. And it looked like it was going a little more northerly earlier this morning, and now it's shifting around a bit more southwesterly. It's the same thing that we saw yesterday, where the winds turned more westerly during the afternoon hours. And that's going to impact your growth on the fire. But that gets a little bit more into the weather forecast. Before we get into that, I do just want to see what's the fire actually look like. And just like yesterday, it looks like there's two separate plumes on this. So you have what would be your southeastern plume, and then actually let's see where this camera is located. So that's going to be down between Placerville and Pullock Pines. So that's going to be looking up at the fire. You see Slate Mountain up there. So if we're looking up at the fire, and it's kind of hard to tell. I believe that plume on the left side would be the more northern plume right there, but it's also tricky because in this video, it looks like the southern side is more active. But perhaps so this is a 3-hour time lapse. Perhaps as we go later in time, this one calms down and then this one starts to kick up. They actually both kind of look like they're calming down right now, and then this is going to be the most recent one. Yeah, the most recent one actually looks like there's still a bit more smoke coming off right there. I'd say both of those, though, don't look terrible, especially considering how hot and dry it is out there. And that's another part of the kind of current conditions is our closest weather station to Slate Mountain right now is showing 91 degrees. It's showing we didn't have a great moisture recovery overnight, 34%. So that makes it even more impressive that they're able to say that they held it to its current footprint overnight. That's hard to do when you have fuels that, when we look at the fire history, where the Crozier fire is itself hasn't had any fires in decades, and that's going to be a lot of fuels that have just been accumulating. You notice, though, to the east, we have the 2014 King Fire. So that's why the southern edge, even though it does look like it kind of slopped over Mosquito Road here, I'm actually not too worried about that southern edge, because as it goes into the 2014 King Fire, it's going to run out of steam. And when we look at the current heat detections, it already looks like it has run out of steam, where we're now just seeing more of that heat on the northern side right there. And when we look back at the videos, this is going to be another 3-hour time lapse. So it did look pretty active. Let's see, it's almost about 1 o'clock right now. So that's about maybe 10 in the morning. We're seeing some decent smoke coming off. And then it starts to actually kind of calm down a little bit. But it's on and off. Fires tend to pulse. And it does look like it's maybe lying down a bit more, but we did have some wind gusts. It says max around 17 miles per hour. But if you look at the winds right now, that station's showing 7 miles per hour. That station's showing 10 miles per hour. So although it's very hot and dry, it's not all that windy. So overall, not much heat on the fire. Looking at the fire history, I'm not too worried about that southern edge as it goes into the King Fire. I'd say the bigger question mark is going to be how much that northern spot grows. And then if we look at structures, is there anything near there? Well, there's nothing within about 4 miles. But then if we go all the way up here, that's going to be about, that's about 4 miles away. What's the name of that? Starts with a Q. Quintet. So we got 4 miles there. We're not seeing much smoke at the moment, even though it seemed more active earlier in the day. That usually doesn't make sense, because as things get hotter, dry, and windier in the afternoon, usually things pick up. But it must just be due to the fact that they have some air attack on it. They do have a lot of resources already on this fire, 1,500 personnel. Now, with that being said, there are still 1,600 structures being threatened. So if I am saying good news throughout this video, I definitely still take all the evacuation orders and warnings seriously. But, I mean, right now, I'm not seeing a huge cause for concern on this. Although, with the exception of maybe some changes in the weather forecast. So, finally, let's get into the last section, Wildfire Forecast here. Looking at the southern side, again, not worried about it going into the 2014 King Fire, even though that is one of the areas where we've seen some of the growth, although it looks like that's calming down now. On this northern side, there would be a big concern about if it were moving towards the south or the west, because you see all those orange dots, those represent the structures. But the thing is when we turn on the winds, we have a southwesterly wind. And we can confirm that with the direction the smoke plume is going up towards the northeast. We can also confirm that with a weather station, just for, good measure, that's pointed towards the northeast. So what that's going to do to the fire is try to push it towards the northeast. And if you look in that area, there is a lot of fuel that hasn't burnt out in a long time that isn't part of the King Fire burn scar. The winds would try to push it in that direction, but if we look at the winds right now, they don't look that strong. So now we get into the forecast for today, tonight, and tomorrow. Here's today, here's tonight, there's tomorrow night. Temperatures, hot, it's already in the low 90s, so expecting maybe mid 90s at the peak of the afternoon. Dry conditions out there. The station was already saying 20%. Looks like that's around where it's going to be this afternoon. Now, the winds are the biggest question mark here, because notice temperature and humidity not really changing much between today and tomorrow, maybe even getting a little bit drier out there tomorrow. Winds on this map, it's showing that southwesterly direction that we've confirmed in all our other sources, but this one's saying 5 mile per hour winds. Well, we've already seen, it shows a max gust of 17. Right now it's showing 10 mile per hour winds. So it seems like this one, which is from the National Weather Forecast, might be undercalling the winds a bit. But then if we look at another source, which is windy, right now it's saying 20 mile per hour winds. So this one seems to be overcalling it. And then as we get into the peak of the afternoon, they have those winds going up to around 24 miles per hour. So what does that mean? This one's saying 5, and it's undercalling right now. This one is saying 24, and it's overcalling right now. So the truth is probably somewhere in between, that we're going to end up with some 15 mile per hour winds from the southwest this afternoon. So I'm actually not too concerned about the winds. And even though it's very hot and dry out there right now, it's already in the 90s with 20% relative humidity. And it seems like the fire has actually been calming down over the last few hours. So that seems like we're in a pretty good position there. So I'm not actually too concerned at the moment. I would say where I do have some concern with this fire is with the longer range forecast. So this, we kind of have to take a wide view. Here's the big high that's been over California for a few days. It's led to a lot of the above average temperatures, a lot of the dry conditions that we've had, the very active behavior on the park fire towards the start of this week. And you notice how far apart those lines are. Those are going to be your isobars, lines of constant pressure, and then there's your high. Well, watch what happens as this high moves off to the east. You're going to notice these lines getting closer together, and you're also going to notice some cooler air starting to move in. So the reason how close the lines are together is important is because the closer they are together, the steeper your atmosphere is and the stronger your winds are going to be. So right now, still hot and dry over California, and winds don't look that bad today. They maybe go up to 15 miles per hour. But as we go throughout the weekend, look at the little trough that starts to move in. The high moves over almost to New Mexico. So some cooler air starts to fill in. That should bring a little bit more moisture. But then those isobars get closer together and our winds pick up. So that's where, again, keep in mind this model has been consistently overcalling the winds across all of California recently. So we can maybe subtract 10 from it. But it's showing 24 miles per hour today. Saturday, it's showing 24 miles per hour again. And then Sunday, it's showing a slight increase in winds. That's also something we were seeing in the park fire forecast, which was the video I recorded about 30 minutes ago. And it also looks like it's from a bit more of a southerly direction on Sunday, as opposed to some of that westerly that we have in the wind right now. So the reason I'm a little concerned about the long range forecast is, one, I don't know how much we can trust these different models because they haven't really been right recently, but the last time a high moved out like this, we did see our winds increase across California, and that was what led to a lot of the explosive growth that we saw in the park fire. So As those winds increase and turn more southerly, there could be more potential for it to move up towards the north into all these fuels that haven't burnt out in a very long time. So I would say that's my main concern right now. But with that being said, when we've looked at some of the imagery, there's not that much smoke coming off of the fire at the moment. So we're just going to have to wait and see what those winds do this weekend. So hopefully this video is helpful, and thanks for watching.